The Senate will come to order. Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the guests in the gallery, on the floor, colleagues, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar,
Excused.
Baumgartner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert, John, Johnston, Jones, Kafalas, Kerr,
Excused.
Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez-Humenick, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott,
Excused.
Sonnenberg, Stedman, Tate, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods, Scott, Mr. President.
Here. With 33 present, 0 absent, 2 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, February 12th, 2016 be dispensed with and the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and the Journal is approved. Senate Services.
February 16, 2016, correctly gross Senate Bills 63 and 107, correctly revised House Bill 1018, House Joint Resolution 1008, correctly enrolled Senate Joint Memorials 2 and 3.
Introduction of resolutions.
Senate Joint Resolution 7 by Senator Crowder and Representatives Esgar and Navarro concerning Awareness Day for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate lay over Senate Joint Resolution 7 to February 17.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Joint Resolution 7 will be laid over until February 17th. Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 125 by Senator Holbert and Representative Kraft-Harp concerning the governors and credit unions in connection therewith authorizing the appointment of an audit committee in lieu of a supervisory committee and allowing the reasonable compensation of an officer, director, or committee member for his or her service to the credit union.
Senate Bill 125 is assigned to the Committee on Finance.
Senate Bill 126 by Senator Roberts concerning parity of state chartered banks and federally chartered banks regarding frequency of meetings.
Senate Bill 126 is assigned to the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology.
Senate Bill 127 by Senator Tate and Representative Art concerning the repeal of the Medical Clean Claims, Transparency, and Uniformity Act.
Senate Bill 127 is assigned to the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology.
Senate Bill 128 by Senator Hodge and Representative Art concerning the ability to amend limited terms that govern the operation of water right without reopening all terms governing the previous approval of the operation.
Senate Bill 128 is assigned to the Committee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy.
House Bill 1030 by Representatives Brown and Court and Senator Donovan concerning the use of off-highway vehicles.
House Bill 1030 is assigned to the Committee on Local Government and the Committee on Finance.
House Bill 1039 by Representatives Mitch Bush and Rankin and Senators Todd and Donovan concerning requirement that non-commercial motor vehicles be appropriately equipped when driving on the Interstate 70 Mountain Corridor during winter storm conditions.
House Bill 1039 is assigned to the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 1061 by Representatives Carver and Nordberg and Senator Todd concerning requirement that transportation infrastructure needs of federal military installations be given full consideration during the preparation of the comprehensive statewide transportation plan.
House Bill 1061 is assigned to the Committee on Transportation.
House Bill 1064 by Representative Brown and Senator Roberts concerning local licensing of medical marijuana testing facilities.
House Bill 1064 is assigned to the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology.
House Bill 1081 by Representatives Ransom and Escar, and Senators Lundberg and Newell concerning removing obsolete reporting provisions in Title 25.5 of the Colorado Revised Statutes.
House Bill 1081 is assigned to the Committee on Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1082 by Representatives Garnett and Willett and Senator Todd concerning area vocational schools and in connection therewith changing the name of the area vocational schools to area technical colleges and adding representation for area technical colleges to certain boards.
House Bill 1082 is assigned to the Committee on Education.
House Bill 1085 by Representative Thurlow and Senator Tate concerning simplifying the process for returning to a prior name after a decree of dissolution or legal separation has been entered.
House Bill 1085 is assigned to the Committee on Judiciary.
House Bill 1090 by Representative McCann and Senator John concerning conditions under which a person may assist another for compensation in obtaining the proceeds of a foreclosure sale after all liens have been satisfied.
House Bill 1090 is assigned to the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology.
House Bill 1091 by Representatives Thurlow and Mitch Bush and Senator Sonnenberg concerning a change to the biennial filing date for rate-regulated electric utilities to submit their plans for transmission facilities to the Public Utilities Commission, and in connection with deleting the requirement that the Commission issue a final order within 180 days after an application for the construction or expansion of transmission facilities is filed.
House Bill 1091 is assigned to the Committee on Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy.
House Bill 1095 by Representative McCann and Senator Crowder concerning health insurance coverage for early refills of prescription eye drops.
House Bill 1095 is assigned to the Committee on Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1119 by Representative Thurlow and Senator Holberg concerning a modification in the number of days that an aircraft may remain in the state after it is purchased for purposes of the sales and use tax exemption on the purchase of certain aircraft.
House Bill 1119 is assigned to the Committee on Finance.
House Bill 1125 by Representative Rubin, Senator Baumgartner concerning creating a Colorado statutory reference to conform with the federal definition of veteran.
House Bill 1125 is assigned to the Committee on State, Veterans, and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1139 by Representatives Willett and Arndt and Senator Scott concerning electronic participation in committee meetings during the legislative interim.
House Bill 1139 is assigned to the Committee on State, Veterans, and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1144 by Representative Becker, J. and Pedersen and Senator Grantham concerning transparency in post-secondary courses offered to high school students.
House Bill 1144 is assigned to the Committee on Education. Please add Senator Aguilar to the roll.
Kerr?
He's not.
Right, how close?
Too far. We're good.
Third reading of bills consent calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar?
Senate Bill 107 by Senator Cook and Representative Pabon concerning the regulation of voter registration drive circulators in connection therewith requiring circulators to complete mandatory training. House Bill 1018 by Representatives Carver and Mitch Bush and Senator Todd concerning the requirement that the Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee provide advice and comments regarding transportation-related matters to both the Department of Transportation and the Transportation Commission rather than to the department only. Senate Bill 63 by Senator Roberts, Representative Vihil concerning the authority of local government to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with an out-of-state local government to provide critical public services.
Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adopt all the bills on the third reading of bills for final passage consent calendar, which includes three bills: Senate Bill 107, House Bill 1018, and Senate Bill 63.
The motion is for the adoption on third reading of all the bills on the consent calendar. Is there further discussion on any of the bills? Seeing none, are there any no votes on any of the bills? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 107 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Kafalis. Please add the President. With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1018 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Kafalis. Senator Merrifield. Senator Donovan. Senator Garcia. Senator Jones? Senator Heath? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 63 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senator Jones, Senator Heath, co-sponsors on Senate Bill 63, Senator Kafalis, Senator Crowder, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Newell, Senator Merrifield, Senator Woods, Senator Donovan, Senator Todd, Senator Lambert, please have the President. General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for purpose of consideration of General Order second reading of bills calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Orders second reading of bills. Senator Grantham will take the chair.
Committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 112?
Senate Bill 112 by Senator Tate concerning a modification to the required quantity of voter service and polling centers.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 16-112.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 16-112 concerns voter service and polling centers for early voting. I'll provide some background real quick. House Bill 13-1303 required county clerk and recorders of every county to designate a minimum number of voter service and polling centers. The acronym for that is VSPC. In the 2014 election revealed a continued trend of much higher preference in real terms versus expectations for drop box locations and mail over voter service and polling centers, with the exception on Election Day. Mobilizing unnecessary voter service and polling centers is an expensive waste of already limited county resources that could be better allocated towards increasing the quantity of voter service centers on Election Day, or providing a different county services like mental health services to our vulnerable citizens. House Bill 1303 established minimum standards for county clerks to follow, and these are only minimum standards that this bill seeks to adjust. Clerks will still be able to mobilize more voter service centers at their discretion, which in testimony we heard they did on Election Day when we have the need. Specifically, what does this bill do? It removes the requirement that voter service centers be open on the first Saturday during the 15-day period prior to Election Day, when the statewide average of use is 3 persons per day use these centers. It additionally reduces the minimum number of required voter service centers in counties with at least 25,000 active electors. During the early voting period, at least one voter service center will be required per 75,000 active electors versus 30,000. This bill is prudent. Conducting elections is an expensive, necessary, and important function of our counties and important for our democracy. State laws should be responsive to current up-to-date information and establishing minimum standards that allow counties to meet their obligations and provide clerks the flexibility to have freed up resources to meet the particular voting needs of their constituencies. In 2014, only 5% of all votes were cast at voter service centers, and only 5% of those 5% were cast during this first week of early voting. Those voters could certainly go to other voter service centers that would be open or later on in the voting period. I do have a diagram to display what I call pretty overwhelming quantitative information. Members, if you could look to the graph on display. The line shows the current data of voting behavior. And you can see by the graphical display that the overwhelming amount of in-person voting occurs on the day of the election and the day before the election. The early week, which is the first section of the graph, shows virtually no activity in these voting service centers. The average usage of a voting service center statewide is 6 people per day, not per hour, not per minute, per day. Additionally, on the display, you'll see graphs, blue and yellow. Yellow represents the current VSPC capacity in a graphical format. You can see in some ways we're underserved on election day. On election day, we have on average 292 voters going in a voter service center, compared to only 6 per day during this early voting season. The blue bars represent my proposed bill. You can see how it trues up the voter service center capacity to the actual voting needs of Colorado citizens, freeing up potentially $100,000 to $300,000 for our counties to provide extra capacity on election day for our voters, or again, to use those funds to provide services to our constituents. Again, I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 16-112.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'd ask for a no vote on this bill. We should be finding ways for people to vote, not fewer ways for people to vote. We need access to the ballot for everybody. Now, the argument is, well, this costs money. It's a waste of money. Well, the fact is, because we were essentially running mail ballot campaigns and polling places, this system is cheaper than what we had prior to House Bill 1303. Now, when we did House Bill 1303, some of you who were around here might remember, the idea was to run it through the 2016 election, the big election, the presidential election, to make sure it works, and then to assess. This is premature. The argument that only a few people use these centers flies in the face of providing access for people to vote the way they want to, at the ballot box or to change their registration. Our testimony in committee, one of the things that came up was, oh, this first day isn't very busy. The Saturday is going to be eliminated under this bill. But when you look at the information was given to us, for instance, from El Paso County, you find people use that. And I wonder how many people came back from Iraq or Afghanistan and went in to do their place of residence registration that way, on that day. It gets to the point of, this is a sacred right we have to vote. And to say, oh, it's only this many, it's only this many of a very, very important thing. The fact is we should go ahead with this, which is cheaper than it was before. We should see how it works and then come back. But the standard shouldn't be, oh, there aren't enough people. It costs more money, even though it's less. The standard should be, how important is it for people to exercise their right to vote? And to me, it's critical. And I have no doubt at the El Paso service centers that they had people coming in who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan and defended our country, and we're telling them we are not making it as convenient for you. So I ask for a no vote on this bill.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And since the honorable gentleman from Boulder did indicate El Paso County users did use the service centers, I do want to indicate that a total of 5 people in the whole county on the first Saturday used the 11 voter service centers that were set up. 5 people total. Additionally, we're not eliminating any access or options. All the options are still on the table. All we're doing is eliminating some locations at great expense to the counties, which they could then use to reallocate on election day when there's 292 people per day using these centers with long lines, and that, in my view, that truly is the difficult access. Imagine a senior citizen that realizes they made an error on their ballot the final week of the election and needs to go to the voter service center to make a correction during those final 2 days and confronts a line associated with serving 300 people per day in those voter service centers. It'd be nice if those counties had more capacity. Additionally, I notice the senator from Boulder did not Louisville, pardon me, thank you, did not advocate to increase more voter service centers or additional weeks or an additional month of voter service center activity in front of this. Because it would seem to me his arguments would ask for even more time of voter service center activity, maybe 2 months before the election. And if that were law, the irony, of course, those arguments that he's presenting today against this current quota system would still apply. So again, I urge an aye vote on the bill, and let's put faith in our county clerks, which they've demonstrated over and over again in bipartisan fashion on this legislation, a willingness to provide what the citizens need. And I do want to emphasize that there is bipartisan support for this bill in terms of stakeholders. The League of Women Voters supports this bill, and additionally, last year in testimony, the clerks of both Boulder County and Denver County testified in favor of this bill, as well as the Clerks Association this year. So please, let's not squander an opportunity to make some critical adjustments so the clerks can better serve our voters in an election year. Again, thank you, and I urge an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, colleagues. Today I rise in opposition to this bill and want to start by asking us all a few questions. The first is, what's the price of our freedom? And as a correlative, then, what is the price of our democracy? This bill proposes that we should limit both access to freedom and democracy by limiting our access to how we participate here in our society by voting. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we passed House Bill 1303, we said every single person, because we value our democracy, should have the ability to vote in the fashion that they choose, whether that's in person casting a ballot or it's by mail sending it in. We're saying, let's save money. Let's make sure we're more efficient as government rather than saying we should do our number one duty, which is protect freedom and democracy. And by doing that, if we're doing our number one job, we're protecting access to the ballot box. For those of you who weren't here during the debate on 1303, it was a lovely 9-hour slog where we heard the bill read at length in this chamber. So I know that pretty well, and I've spent the rest of my years down here actually working on this issue. I want us to think about what a voter service and polling center is for. Most of our residents vote by mail. That's true. They drop them off in the mailbox or in a drop-off location. But we have voter service and polling centers because we learned the lesson from places like Oregon that did all mail-in ballot, which actually limited access to the ballot box. How, you might ask? We have residents who, for whatever reason, choose not to vote by mail, but for other reasons may have a different purpose, especially those with disabilities. When you need an accessible voting machine, you can't find that in your mailbox. When you need assistance because your hands are shaking because of your disability, guess what? You're going to find it at a voter service and polling center, and we shouldn't be closing off access to the most vulnerable. We heard this, oh, well, it was just 5 people who voted in that El Paso County voter service and polling center, just 5. Well, why did they choose to use it? Maybe we should start there. Was it they could ensure their vote because they needed the assistance that was guaranteed in a voter service and polling center? I think probably so. I also want to just point, I don't have any fancy graphs. I didn't know we were doing that this year. It seems like a break from tradition for the Senate. But those voter service and polling center graphs, I think, actually don't illustrate the full picture. Those voter service and polling center graphs are based on dissimilar elections. 2013 is when 1303 went into effect. The first time it was tested was during the recall elections, then during the 2013 coordinated county elections. Then we get to 2014, which is a congressional race. We had a gubernatorial race, but we have not yet had a presidential election using this new system. So the data that was presented is dissimilar to what's coming ahead of us. Take some time, look at all of the information we have on the Secretary of State's website. Look at all of the information we have in our county clerks. What you'll see is so much more participation during a presidential election year. Folks are accustomed to voting on that fourth year. And turnout is much higher, proportionally much higher compared to a congressional or coordinated county election. So to believe, hey, let's cut off some access points on the front end and maybe just boost some access at the back end, that will be enough, right? I think that's disingenuous. I don't think it actually will provide the kind of access that we need. I will agree with the bill sponsor that we need more access, more voter access on Election Day. I totally agree with that. And that should not be at the expense on the front end of the early voting period. Period. We need to be doing all in our power to increase access to the ballot box, not limiting it. Last year, I actually did poll watching down at the Auraria campus and saw the long lines. I agree. Let's expand access on voting day, but let's not cut off access everywhere else. Let's just do some simple math. Very simple math. 5 people a day for a week, open 5 days a week. Okay? There's 25 votes and just one. Oh, 7 days a week. Let's do that. 7 days a week. That's 35 people in just 1 week of voting. And imagine those folks don't have any other time due to work circumstance, family circumstance, just the way that life works, that they cannot come at another point in time in the early voting period. And we lose those voters. There are members of the House who won their election with more than just barely 40 votes. There are members in the Senate who won their seats with about 100 votes. So everything we do to suppress voter turnout actually does have a political impact. It can have a depression impact on voter turnout. Government should work for people. We shouldn't be working for the government's bottom line. We need to make sure that we're accessing the ballot box for every single person. Every single person should have access to the ballot box. And that should be our primary focus. It should be that simple. And if we find some great anomaly this presidential election cycle that people just don't want to show up and they don't show up for the early vote period, then let's have a conversation next year about how we retool the voter service and polling center numbers. But why? Why would we do it during a presidential election year when we know there will be more people than ever participating? Why would we limit early access to the ballot box, something that we see as a hallmark of our democracy? Why would we do that now? Colleagues, I'm going to ask again, what's the cost of our freedom? What's the cost of our democracy?
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to recognize that I'm sorry the senator was surprised by the graphical display, but I do want to try to usher in some degree of quantitative reasoning over straw man narratives. One thing I want to mention about, like in society, economics, anything, quotas and controls really limit access, not expand access. And this really, our current election system is no exception. The fallacy is that somehow options are being removed off the table. The fallacy is those certain voters that happen to go to a voter service center on one particular day wouldn't go on a different day or wouldn't just go to the other one in the county. This is a specific bill to counties of higher population that have multiple voter service centers already available. But the key is that we do need to provide service and access to voters. We do need to do that, and we need to provide that when voters are coming to these centers. Now, the reality is that there is no limited of access to the ballot box because 95% of people use the drop box or the mail system. Only 5% of people use the voter service center, and 95% of those people use the service center the last 2 days of the election. I think it's important to recognize we need to increase access to voters for those 2 days when they do arrive at a voter service center with a problem. Additionally, I just wanted to make a note that, again, this is prudent. This is supported by bipartisan stakeholders and nonpartisan groups. I believe our county clerks can make the right decisions, and they have shown to do that already in testimony. Certain counties already recognizing turnout being an issue on Election Day have used the discretion to open up additional voter service centers over the minimum. We need to free up resources and give them the flexibility to do more of that. And lastly, I want to say about turnout. Turnout will be higher this year, but we're not coming from a 30% turnout year in 2014 where we'll magically be at unity this year. We already have a high turnout that the drop box and mail system has enabled. Let's keep on being smart what we're doing. Our turnout is increasing. Our voter participation is increasing. It's good for Colorado. Let's keep on making those smart decisions. Again, I urge an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the conversation about quantitative analysis, because I think when we start talking about numbers and percentages, it can be easy to forget the people. So only 95% of the 5% of folks who use voter service and polling centers use it during the time that's being eliminated to be cut off at those locations. For those of you who've been watching the elections in the state of Colorado, things can get mighty tight. And that 5% can have an impact. It can make or break an election. We have races in this legislature that were decided by 0.05% of the vote. So yeah, let's be honest about what this actually could do. Let's be honest about how this could impact this legislature, how it could impact the rest of our state, and potentially the fate of the free world with the presidential election resting here in Colorado. I don't want to take that risk. So when we're talking about, 0.05% of 1.5 million folks who decide to participate this election season, it's a huge number of people who may have their right limited. And we shouldn't be in the business of limiting people's fundamental right to vote. The right to vote is foundational for all of our other rights. The way we protect our right to privacy, the way we protect our right to due process, the way we protect all of our rights enshrined in the Constitution is through our foundational right to vote. Nothing should be done to diminish the opportunity to vote for the people of the state of Colorado.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I rise in respectful opposition to Senate Bill 112. I want to explain my position briefly, and that is my purpose here at the mic. First of all, I want to acknowledge the presentation by the bill sponsor. I did listen to the bill in committee and listen to the testimony on all sides. And for me, the most important thing is that, as people have said, a fundamental right of our citizenship is fundamental right and responsibility is to vote. And I think a fundamental responsibility of government is to make sure that people have access so they can make informed decisions when they vote. And anytime we diminish those opportunities to have access, I have a concern. I think that some good points have been raised regarding this issue, but I am concerned about the timing of when these changes are being proposed. And we know for a fact that in the upcoming election on November 2016, the ballot will be very crowded. It will be a complicated ballot. And for that reason, I think that we'll need to have these vote services and polling centers open early, because we see more and more people are voting early, and they may have a lot of questions about such a complicated and crowded ballot. And for that reason, I rise in opposition, because I think we need to evaluate how the voter turnout and the dynamics, the demographics, how that is, and then ultimately make decisions after this election on whether or not we should pull back on access to these vote centers, vote service and polling centers early on. Thank you.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Senate Bill 112. Having listened to the debate for and against, I thought I would come up and maybe just offer some clarification that we're not taking away these early voting centers. We are learning from experience. We are looking at the data now that we have for elections since the underlying legislation was adopted. And when that was adopted, it was hypothetical. How many of these centers do you think we will need for a large county or a small county? And in Colorado, we have 64 counties. I happen to live in Douglas, which happens to be one of those large counties. But the perspective of freedom and liberty and access to the ballot, if one lives in a small county, there's only one of these voting centers that would be made available, and that could mean a very long drive. So, in a larger county where there could be multiple such facilities, again, based on a bill that passed through both chambers at that time, I think on totally partisan lines, and took a hypothetical guess as to how many of these voting centers would be required. Now we actually have data to look back and say, oh, maybe we don't need as many of those in the large counties. And I think we're making an informed decision. We could have another election or 2 or 5 or 10 cycles, and our predecessors, or excuse me, our successors sometime off in the future might say, we need even fewer of these because demand is lower than we think it might even be today, based on data. But today we have actual data to look at. When the law was adopted, we really didn't. It was a guess as to moving to all-mail ballots, how many of these early voting centers would voters demand. I believe that we now have data that allows us to make a more informed decision based on supply and demand. And again, for the small counties, there's only one of these that's required in the entire county. And for a large county, to be able to look at their demand and reduce those numbers, that seems like a good thing for us to do to equip our county clerks, both sides of the political aisle, not a partisan bill, but allow a county clerk in Denver, in Boulder, in Douglas, and El Paso to say we need fewer of these and allow them to make that decision and to be better accountable to the voters of that district. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like my colleague from Adams County, I remember painfully being here in 2013 and the debate around House Bill 1303, which indeed lasted a long, long time. Let's remember why we did that. We had just come off a presidential year in 2012. And I, like my colleague from Jefferson County, like to look at experience as well. But we have not experienced a presidential election under House Bill 1303. All as we are asking, and all as that my colleagues that have spoken about this have said, let's experience why we passed this bill in 2013. We experienced it and we passed it because of the experience coming off that presidential year in 2012. So I would agree with my colleagues who said, let's base this on experience. The fact is, we need to have that experience this year in 2016. That's why this bill should not be passed at this time. Let us experience an election, a presidential election year, then we can talk about it. But we have not experienced why all of us felt so strongly about passing this in 2013. I would ask for a no vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I like quantitative analysis as much as the next person. Only 6 people a day at these sites. We're reducing these sites by 35%, folks, both on election day, the increased amount, and before election day. 35% reduction with this bill. I just did the math. There'll be 138 sites in the status quo and only 88 with this bill. Let's also talk about, oh, it's only 6 people a day. Well, if you do the difference, it's 300 people a day, and it's 4,200 votes. This is a sacred right. Earlier was said I argued we should have even more sites. No, I did not argue that. I said we should have the big election, 2016, happen. We should have a presidential race where the stresses are the greatest on this system to see how it works. And that was always the plan. I'm not surprised that people try to chip away at it now. But the fact is, we should be giving people access to vote, not less access to vote. We should give people who want to change their address or want to vote in person that ability beforehand. And my math was only, by the way, for that 4,200 votes for the first 14 days. That didn't include the bigger days towards the end. That's a lot of people. And finally, I want to say it again, you know, it's a lot of people for all of us who have that right to vote, a cherished right. But I want you to think about somebody coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan that may have used those sites to change their registration. I want you to think about that. We get down here and talk all about veterans. This helps veterans. And the numbers from El Paso County that were presented in committee, I think, back that up. So quantitatively, this is a bad move. It's a bad move backwards. Let's see what happens in the biggest election we have, and then look at it, and then also prioritize how important our right to vote is. I ask for a no vote on this bill.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had an excellent debate on this legislation. I do want to point out to the senator from Louisville, if he was mistaken or not, I couldn't really tell, but we're only talking about reducing the minimum requirement for the first week of the voting period, not for the entire voting period. I just want to make that clear. And again, it is my view as the sponsor that by reducing that quota will free up resources to provide the clerks the ability to do additional voter outreach and provide additional resources on Election Day. And I'll do one final thing I want to say too, related to the legislation of 3 years ago. It is just a quota that was arbitrarily guessed upon, and sometimes it's okay to say oops on something and recalibrate. So again, I've got a great debate, and I appreciate the differing points of view, and again, I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 112? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 112. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 51?
Senate Bill 51 by Senators Johnston and Lundberg concerning increasing judicial discretion regarding the imposition of consecutive sentences for violent crimes.
Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 51 and move the Judiciary Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Judiciary Committee report you'll see included here narrowed the focus of the bill to 3 enumerated crimes that you'll see here listed: aggravated robbery, assault, and escape, and would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we all have those bucket list items when you're in your final year in the legislature you have to get done. One of the things on my bucket list was I always want to do a bill with Senator Lundberg. So I'm delighted that we are here together on our first co-prime bill together. Quickly, folks, I know we have a lot of bills up this morning that will probably be more contentious than this one. This was a simple sentencing inconsistency that this bill sought to justify, which is currently in state statute. If you have what's called a multiple criminal and a single criminal incident, if you commit multiple crimes, the sentencing structure is very different. So here's the way it works. If you go into a grocery store or a convenience store and you hold up the convenience store, and there are 4 people standing behind the counter, you are charged with 4 separate counts for each one of those 4 people. And in law, all 4 of those counts have to run consecutively. So if each one is a 15-year sentence, those 4 counts of 15 years have to be 15 and plus 15 plus 15 plus 15, which is a 60-year sentence. If, however, you go into one grocery store, a convenience store, and rob it, and then go a mile down the street and rob a second one, and then go a mile down the street and rob a bar, and then go a mile down the street and rob a fourth one. Those 4 counts, the judge has discretion to either have them run consecutively or have them run concurrently, which is you could have 4 separate charges that run for one 15-year sentence. So there was this simple inconsistency in the law where there was discretion with multiple different crimes to have them run concurrently. Out of a single crime, there was no capacity for discretion to allow them to run concurrently or consecutively based on the fact pattern. All we're doing here is taking a enumerated set of crimes, the 3 we listed, aggravated robbery, assault in the second degree, and escape, and allow judicial discretion on the sentencing in those crimes if a judge decided the fact pattern called for it to allow them to run consecutively and not concurrently. Sorry, concurrently and not consecutively.
Is there any further discussion?
Well, we've got the amendment.
Yeah. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a no in committee, and I'll probably be a no today. And we're having a policy discussion regarding sentencing, and what we're doing is we're chipping away at it piecemeal, a little bit here, a little bit there. And this bill did not go through CCJJ, and this body created CCJJ to look at policy issues from the 30,000-foot level, so to speak, and not to look at bills, like I said, piecemeal. So this bill isn't as bad as some of the other sentencing reform bills that I've seen or that will be coming up. And I just think if we're going to make that decision about a policy on sentencing reform, we need to do what this body created CCJJ for and review it there as opposed to a little bit at a time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Amendment L005?
Amendment L005, Senate Bill 51 by Senator Johnson.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a technical amendment changing the numbering of the sections. In our amendment that we ran late that evening, we misnumbered the sections, so this just changes the numbering. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The aye has it, and that amendment is adopted. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, just quite briefly, I agree to be a co-prime sponsor on this bill because I believe it does add a little greater consistency to the sentencing system, and it's not preventing the assignment of the sentences to be consecutive. It's giving the judge the ability to make that decision. I believe that's an appropriate level, and as the good Senator co-prime sponsor did state, it is consistent with very similar crimes as well. So with that, I would ask for an aye to vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 51? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 51. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 51 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1044?
House Bill 1044 by Representative Baker J. and Senator Hill concerning the extension of dates related to the Petroleum Storage Tank Fund.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I've got a bill before you here that would have been on consent if we hadn't had a bomb threat. And so just real briefly, what we have here is literally it would have been on consent. We closed down committee before we could get to it. Colleagues, House Bill 1044 came out unanimously out of the House, and that is either an argument for or against the bill, I understand. But what we're working to do here is just push out the sunset date on the Petroleum Storage Tank Fund. That's a fee that all of these industries pay into to clean up leaking petroleum tanks. So I ask for your support on this, and any questions, I appreciate it. With that, Mr. Chair, I move House Bill 1044.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1044? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1044. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The eye has it, and that bill is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 70?
Senate Bill 70 by Senator Neville and Representative Everett concerning the prohibition of discrimination against employees based on labor union participation.
We will be in a senatorial 5. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I move that the committee lay over Senate Bill 70 to February 19.
Motion before the body is to lay over Senate Bill 70. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that will be laid over. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Motion before the body is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and that is adopted.
Yes. The Senate will come back to order. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had several bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 16, 2016, Mr. President, your committee whole page report is under consideration of the following task bills, being a second reading thereof, makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 112, Senate Bill 51 as amended, passed on second reading in order to gross, place the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1044 passed on second reading in order to revise, place the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 70 laid over until February 19, 2016, retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion before the body is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Is there any discussion? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Senate Bill 112, Senate Bill 51 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1044 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 70 laid over until February 19th and retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of governor's appointments. Mr. Majors.
Member of the Public Utilities Commission of the State of Colorado, effective January 12, 2016, for a term expiring the Monday preceding the second Tuesday in January 2020. Francis Ann Cosillo of Denver, Colorado, serves as Democrat appointed.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move at this time that the Senate confirm consideration of governor's appointments, the member of the Public Utilities Commission of the State of Colorado, one Francis Concilia of Denver.
You have heard the motion. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, are there any no votes? Senator Neville? With 33 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Francis Ann Concilia of Denver is appointed as a member of the Public Utilities Commission of the State of Colorado. Message from the Governor.
December 24, 2015, in the Honorable Colorado Senate, ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to the powers conferred upon me by the Constitutional law of the state of Colorado, I have the honor of designating appointments submitted to consideration of the following members of the Colorado State Fair Authority Board of Commissioners for terms by November 1st, 2019. Rebecca Ann Brooks of Denver, Colorado, a Democrat from the 1st Congressional District and a member with substantial experience in agriculture and activities of 4-H clubs appointed. Ronnie Raymond, farmer of Lamar, Colorado, Republican from the 4th Congressional District, a member who is a certified public accountant appointed. Sincerely, John W. Hickenlooper, Governor.
The governor's appointment for Colorado State Fair Authority Board of Commissioners are assigned to the Committee of Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy. Signing of bills.
February 12, 2016, the President signed Senate Joint Resolution 3, House Joint Resolution 1002, Senate Joint Memorial 2, and Senate Joint Memorial 3.
Delivery to the governor.
To the governor for signature on Friday, February 12, 2016 at 2:30 p.m., Senate Joint Resolution 3.
Announcements. Senator Woods.
Ask for a moment of personal privilege, Mr. President.
Granted.
Thank you. Colleagues, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the governor has made a proclamation naming today Digital Learning Day in Colorado. Colorado has been a leader in advancing digital learning and innovative learning practices. Our world has been transformed by technology. And modern life is a little more complex, yes, but efficient, accessible, richer, and faster because of technology. The digital learning folks believe that high-quality digital learning and the effective use of technology can be implemented to improve the learning of every student while empowering teachers and parents. Colleagues, would you join with me now in welcoming the folks from Colorado's digital learning community, specifically the schools of Connections Academy, Branson School Online, and Hope Academy. If you all would stand, welcome them with me, colleagues. We talk a lot about choice, school choice here at the Capitol, and online school is another one of those choices we support. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members on your desk. You have an invitation tonight for the Colorado Timber Industry Association reception over at the City Grill at 5 to 7. I'd like to see you there. Thanks.
Colleagues, I'm going to ask that you join me and stand in a moment of personal silence and recognition for a couple lives lost this week. Very few of us had an opportunity to attend Deputy Geer's funeral service yesterday, and probably none of us will have an opportunity to attend Justice Scalia's memorial service, and I think it would be appropriate that we took a moment of our time in recognition of this great loss to our state, to their families, and to our country. Join me, and I will allow the Senate chimes to ring as well. Thank you. Are there additional announcements? Senator Grantham.
Colleagues, just a reminder, tomorrow morning, appropriations, 8 o'clock, LSBB. It will be on the supplemental package. And for the rest of our colleagues, just remember we have this coming up this week on seconds and thirds as well. So be prepared with your red books on the supplemental bill package. Thank you, Mr. President.
Additional announcement. Senator Newell, it's a new week. Seeing none, Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I move that the Senate adjourn to 9 a.m. Wednesday, February 17.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will be adjourned until 9 a.m. Wednesday, February 17th.